Hello and welcome to our podcast, episode number 33. A magical journey of love, adventure, and self-discovery. I am Timothy and I am here with my good friend, Thomas. Tonight, we're going to discuss a film called Stardust. Stardust is a 2007 romantic fantasy adventure film directed by Matthew Vaughn and co-written by Vaughn and Jane Goldman, based on Neil Gaiman's 1999 novel of the same name. It features an ensemble cast led by Claire Danes, Charlie Cox, Sienna Miller, Ricky Gervais, Jason Fleming, Rupert Everett, Peter O'Toole, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Robert De Niro, with narration by Anne McKellen. First of all, I did not enjoy the film, even though adventure is one of my favorite genres. So, Tom, did you like Stardust?
Well, Tim, I must admit that I did enjoy Stardust quite a bit. It's a film that really captures the imagination with its fantastical world, building and charming characters. I found myself thoroughly entertained from beginning to end.
Yes. Well, Thomas, you are known for enjoying adventure films and fantasy in general. So it's no surprise that you liked this one.
Well, I suppose you have a point there, Tim. But I think even those who aren't typically fans of the genre might find something to appreciate about Stardust. It has elements of humor, romance, and drama that can appeal to various tastes. And let's not forget the all-star cast.
Indeed, I have to agree with you on that point. The cast was quite impressive, especially considering how some of these actors typically don't appear in films like this one. But for me, the story just didn't come together. It felt like it was trying to do too much at once and ended up being a bit confusing and disjointed.
Well, I can understand where you're coming from with that, Tim. The story does involve quite a few elements and characters, but I think it all comes together nicely in the end. It's a film that relies on its visuals and tone to convey the emotions and stakes of each situation rather than just spelling everything out for the audience.
Well, Thomas, I suppose that might be true, but I still found myself getting lost in some of the more complex scenes. And speaking of complexity, let's talk about the characters. There are a lot of them, and they all seem to have their own motivations and backstories. How did you feel about the character development in Stardust?
I thought the character development was quite good, actually. Each character felt unique and had their own quirks that made them endearing or villainous, as the case may be. You had Una, who starts off as a somewhat naive young woman but grows into her role as mother and protector. And Dunstan, who goes from being a bit of a bumbling fool to someone capable of great love and sacrifice. Even some of the minor characters like Captain Shakespeare or Primus got their moments to shine.
Whoa, well, I can see how you might feel that way, Thomas, but I still think there were too many characters introduced without enough time being spent on fleshing them out properly. For example, what was the point of having Ricky Gervais' character in the film if he didn't really contribute anything significant to the story?
Well, Tim, I think that's where some of the charm lies in Stardust. It feels like a throwback to those classic adventure films where you have all these colorful characters popping up here and there, adding their own flavor to the narrative. Plus, having Ricky Gervais in there does provide some comic relief, which helps balance out some of the darker themes present in the story.
I see what you're saying, Tom. But I still think it would have been better if they had focused more on fewer characters and developed those relationships further instead of trying to cram so many personalities into one film. It just felt a bit messy at times for my taste.
Well, I suppose we'll have to agree to disagree on that point, Time. For me, Stardust is an enjoyable romp through a fantastical world filled with memorable characters and moments of genuine emotion. It might not be perfect, but it certainly keeps you entertained from start to finish.
Interesting trivia about Stardust. Well, I found it quite fascinating that the film was almost never made due to various issues with the rights and financing. In fact, production was shut down twice before eventually finding its way onto screens in 2007. Another interesting tidbit is that initially, Robert De Niro was offered the role of Captain Shakespeare, but he turned it down because he felt his character wasn't important enough to justify his presence in the film. Instead, he agreed to play the part of Captain Shakespeare's father, who only appears briefly during a flashback scene.
That's quite surprising, Tim. It just goes to show how things can change during production. Speaking of which, I was also fascinated by the fact that Michelle Pfeiffer was actually pregnant with her second child while filming some of her scenes as Lamia. The makeup and visual effects teams did an incredible job hiding her, conditioned so well that it wasn't noticeable in the final product.
That is quite remarkable, Tom. It really goes to show how dedicated the cast and crew were to bringing this story to life. And speaking of dedication, I was quite impressed by the attention to detail in Stardust. The production designers did an amazing job creating the magical realm of Stormhold and its surrounding villages. Every location felt unique and had its own charm that added to the overall fantastical atmosphere of the film.
Precisely, Tim. I think another thing that contributes greatly to Stardust's charm is its score composed by Ilan Eshkeri. The music perfectly captures the emotional beats of each scene while also adding an air of whimsy and adventure that really sets the tone for the film as a whole. It's no wonder it was nominated for several awards, including a Grammy and a BAFTA.
Indeed, Tom. The music certainly does add another layer to this already rich film experience. And lastly, I think it's worth mentioning that Stardust is based on a novel by Neil Gaiman, who also wrote the script for the movie. While some changes were made during adaptation from page to screen, many fans of the book appreciate how much care was taken in translating its spirit and essence into this visually stunning cinematic experience.
Very true, Tim. Fans of both film and literature seem to agree that Stardust does justice to Gaiman's original work while also standing on its own as an impressive piece of cinema. In fact, there have been talks about potentially adapting other stories from the same universe into future films or TV series, which could be very exciting for fans who love this world and its characters as much as I do.
So, Tom, let's talk about the visual effects and filming techniques used in Stardust. The movie features some truly stunning visuals, particularly when it comes to the magical elements like flying ships, enchanted forests, or the transformation scenes with characters like Lamia, played by Michelle Pfeiffer. How did you feel about these special effects? Did they enhance your viewing experience?
Indeed, Tim. The visual effects in Stardust are nothing short of breathtaking. They managed to seamlessly blend practical effects with computer-generated imagery to create a fantastical world that feels both real and otherworldly at the same time. I particularly love how they used miniatures for some shots, giving it an almost stop-motion feel which adds to its nostalgic charm. And yes, those transformation scenes with Michelle Pfeiffer are indeed stunning.
I have to agree with you there, Tom. The practical effects really do add a certain level of authenticity that CG sometimes struggles to replicate. It's clear that a lot of care and attention was paid to detail during production. And speaking of production, the filming locations were also quite impressive. Canary Wharf in London stood in for the City of Wall, where Tristan lives, while the village of Alnwick in Northumberland provided the perfect backdrop for the small town of Wall's End. How did these locations contribute to your overall enjoyment of the film?
Well, Tim, as someone who loves exploring new places and cultures, I have to say that using real-life locations really added another layer of depth to Stardust. It made me feel like I was actually part of this magical world they had created, rather than just watching events unfold on a screen. And let's not forget about the stunning landscapes and vistas we get to see during their journey across Stormhold. They are simply breathtaking and really showcase how beautiful our own world can be when captured through the lens of fantasy.
I couldn't agree more, Tom. The locations used in Stardust are truly remarkable, and they serve as a testament to the incredible attention to detail that went into making this film. From the windswept moors to the opulent halls of Stormhold itself, every single frame feels richly detailed and immersive. It's no wonder that so many fans have fallen in love with this world and its characters over the years since its release.
Indeed, Tim. As someone who grew up loving fantasy films like The Princess Bride or the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Stardust feels right at home among these classics. It has all the elements you could possibly want from a fantasy adventure. An engaging story full of twists and turns. Memorable characters who you can't help but root for. Breathtaking. Visuals that transport you to another world entirely. Not to mention plenty of action, romance, and humor along the way. What more could one ask for?
Well, Tom, as we've discussed before, there are quite a few characters in Stardust, each with their own unique backstory and motivations. Let's talk about some of our favorites. For me, I really enjoyed the portrayal of Una by Claire Danes. Her journey from being a simple village girl to becoming the mother figure for Tristan and Yvain is truly remarkable. What did you think of her character?
I completely agree with you there, Tim. Claire Danes does an amazing job bringing Una's story to life. She goes through so much throughout the film, from losing her loved to becoming a mother figure herself, but she manages to maintain this incredible strength and resilience that makes her truly admirable. Her relationship with Tristan is also quite touching. You can really see how much they care for each other even though their circumstances are far from ideal.
Another character I found particularly fascinating was Captain Shakespeare, played by Robert De Niro. He's such an enigmatic figure, a pirate turned innkeeper who seems to know more than he lets on. What did you think of his portrayal and character arc in the film?
Robert De Niro is simply fantastic as Captain Shakespeare. His character starts off as this gruff, salty old pirate, but transforms into a wise and caring innkeeper who knows more than meets the eye. He has some truly hilarious scenes with Tristan where they discuss life's big questions and share their wisdom. One of my favorite moments is when he tells Tristan about how he used to be a great pirate, but gave it up for love. That really shows Shakespeare's depth of character.
Indeed, Tom, Robert De Niro's performance as Captain Shakespeare really is a standout moment in the film. His character scent and wisdom, his years of experience shine through, truly come across in his roles, but he's still a young man. His portrayal of starred Tristan was also incredible. I think this is where De Niro first started working as a movie on the sound mixer for the film. He and his character voice overdubs. The most recent show called Timothy, a Magical British Man Who Are Interested in discussing fantasy movies. They remain various professions from starred in Tristan, which they have been watching old friends since childhood and moving into stop working on the magic as they've watched films and making each other during a movie. Tom, with any given that he is always in the TV show business.
I couldn't agree more, Tim. Robert De Niro really does shine in his role as Captain Shakespeare. And speaking of other films and TV series influenced by Stardust, There have been quite a few that have drawn inspiration from this fantastical tale. For example, you can see echoes of Stardust in the hit TV show Once Upon a Time, with its fairy tale characters and magical element. The movie Into the Woods also shares some similarities, blending together classic stories like Cinderella and Jack and the Beanstalk into a single narrative. Even the animated film Trolls take some inspiration from Stardust, featuring a colorful cast of characters embarking on a journey filled with adventure and self-discovery.
That's an interesting point you bring up there, Tom. It just goes to show how influential Stardust has been on the fantasy genre as a whole. And speaking of influences, I was wondering if there were any particular films or stories that inspired the creators of Stardust.
Well, according to Neil Gaiman himself, he was influenced by a variety of sources when writing the novel and later adapting it into a screenplay. He cites works like The Princess Bride, The Wizard of Oz, and even classic fairy tales from the Brothers Grimm as inspirations for Stardust. Additionally, he has mentioned that he drew upon his own childhood experiences growing up in England to help shape the story and its characters.
That's very fascinating, Tom. It really does show how personal experiences can shape our work, especially when it comes to creating stories like this one. And speaking of influences on Stardust, I was wondering, what do you think about the filmmakers and their impact on the fantasy genre as a whole?
Well, Tim, it's no secret that Tim Burton and his co-writer Michael have had a significant impact on the fantasy genre with their works. For example, while Mike be most known for his comic movies like The Princess Bride and The Lord of Rings, he also made contributions to films like Beetleman and his collaborations with director friend Timothy, and Michael worked as an assistant. This means that we can see the influence on YouTube podcast series that discusses specially. In a popular fantasy film review show called Timothy and TV host Tom Burton, who have known each other movies and their impact on The Lord of Rings, they've been working together since childhood as movie makers and Timothy. This means having a podcast on the TV show called Series that hosts in their own personalities opinions on movies and music videos with movies and TV show business.
Well, Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure discussing Stardust with you today. As we wrap up our discussion, I just want to say that this film really does have something for everyone. Adventure, romance, comedy, drama.
It's a true testament to the power of fantasy and storytelling in general.
Absolutely, Tim. Stardust is a real gem in the world of fantasy cinema, and I can't recommend it enough to anyone who loves this genre or just wants to escape into a magical world for a few hours. It's one of those films that you can watch over and over again and always find something new to love about it.
And speaking of which, Tom, what are your final thoughts on Stardust before we sign off? Any particular scenes or moments that stood out to you as especially memorable?
Well, Tim, there are so many great moments in this film, but if I had to choose just one, it would have to be the scene where Tristan and Yvain share their first kiss. The way the music swells, the way the camera pans out over the magical landscape of Stormhold, it's truly a breathtaking moment that encapsulates everything I love about this film.
That's a great choice, Tom. And to conclude our discussion today, we would like to remind all you lovely viewers to please like, subscribe, and comment on our video. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Stardust, as well as any other fantasy film recommendations you might have for us in the future. Thanks for watching and listening, and until next time,